Becoming a narrator and learning a whole new world of audiobook narrating is an awesome journey for those that are getting into it. But it certainly has its challenges. To make it happen, you have to be consistent, learn the performance side of things, and the technical side of things. I want to find out the narrator side of the story. I'm Ryan May, and in each episode of the Home Audio Podcast, I'm talking with a wide array of narrators in their adventures of doing just that. From veteran narrators to beginners just learning the trade. Learning their strategies, their wins, and what's still ahead for them. As you dive into each interview, I want to give you something that narrators learn when they're on their adventure. The 4-Step Narrator Guide is a digestible version of that journey it takes to become a narrator. It's simple but effective action steps that can help aid you in your process. If you want to download this, just head to thehomeaudioproject.com/narrator and sign up there. As you'll hear in this podcast, there are tons of steps to take, but with drive, determination, and some bumps and bruises along the way, you can make it happen no matter what background you come from. Today's guest is Julienne Irons. Julienne comes from a TV and film background, but got into audiobooks to release the passion she has for storytelling. Julienne talks about her rise to become a full-fledged narrator, the work that goes along with that, but how that let her live her ultimate dream, living a life that is completely under her control while having a blast while doing what she loves. We also talked about her biggest mistake to date that happened to her while she was recording an audiobook, which turned out to be a valuable career lesson. But because of her positive mindset, she's able to turn that negative around to be a win for her as well. As I say in this podcast, the narrator story is just as important. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Julienne Irons. All right. Julienne Irons.
Hey!
Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure, Rai.
I love talking to you. I love working with you.
Yeah.
You're fantastic. Obviously, us talking off screen, we already hit it. We're already into it. So, but you're great, man. You're so sweet. You're so kind. So, okay.
Well, as my mother says, it takes one to know one. You know what I'm saying?
It's that New Jersey coming out, huh?
Well, actually, she said, I take one to know one. She's from Jamaica.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. And so you're originally from New Jersey, right?
Originally from Jersey, born and raised, holla. But my mom is originally from Jamaica, and then my dad was born in New York City, in the Bronx, in the boogie down Bronx.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not going to even attempt that accent because I can't do that. So, all right. So I want to dive right in to having the audience get to know you.
Sure.
You know, just your history on where you started, what you're doing now, and more specifically, though, how you got to become a narrator.
Okay. So, when the pandemic hit, I was already sort of like struggling a little bit in life as far as like having a hustle job that I hated and like, you know, I'm a TV and film actor. But I just wanted more. Like I wanted something more to do creatively, and I wanted to get out of my hustle job, which was slanging liquor in the supermarket. Hated that job. Hated it. But I got an email from my friend who was like, hey, this workshop, The Great Audiobook Adventure, is giving grants away to Black actors to take their course. And I was like, I never even thought of doing audiobook narration. Like, wasn't even a thought in my brain. And then I got the grant, and the rest is sort of history. Like, I worked with Lisa a lot. They're so great over there. Really, like, hold your hand through the entire process of, like, building your booth, figuring out what mics to get, to the art of it. And I kind of like, hit the ground running with that and never looked back. And now I ain't got no hustle job no more.
Yeah,
Holla!
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, did you have acting experience before this, like prior to this, whether it was high school or anything else?
Yeah. I've been in LA working as a TV film actress, and I have about 13 co-star credits under my belt, and I've just been working to like level up now. So I love a co-star, and they did me so good. Like I learned so much. I got to work with like Viola Davis and like Laura Innes and so many amazing people that I really admire. And now I'm at that place with my agents and my reps that I'm leveling up. So I'm leveling up to now like recurring, series regular. Those are sort of the auditions that are coming my way. I'm having a blast. Like 2 years ago, I had no idea that this was even an option for me, that like VO work and narration were even an option for me. But what I'm finding is that I really believe it's my calling. Like I'm so weird, but in like a cool way. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm a
No,
weird
you're
person.
cool. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, you're cool for sure.
Like I make all these like weird and like I literally have all these like characters in my head at all times, and like the minute I get a VO audition for some cartoon, my heart starts to like pitter patter, like that
Yeah,
flutter feeling of like like I get so excited.
that's awesome.
So yeah, so I love what I do, love my work. Took me a little bit to find my footing in the industry. But I think now I have more of a clear path of what I want to do and where I want to go and how I want to express myself. So I'm feeling pretty blessed.
So I want to touch on that a little bit just
Yeah.
because what you had said was perfect, having a clear path. So where did you have to go then? You know what I mean? Like in
Oh,
the sense
absolutely.
of you did the great audiobook adventure.
Hmm.
What's the next step?
So this is why that course is, I mean, I'm not like, go get through the course, but it's honestly one of the best things that I could have done for myself, because I literally got taught everything that I needed to know for having a career in narration, right? So from doing that, I was taught, obviously, like I said, like they helped me build my booth. So Elise does like more of like the sort of business and talent side of it. And then her business partner slash boyfriend, boyfriend and girlfriend, as opposed to like husband and wife. Anyway, that he does like all the technical stuff. That's one part of it. And then the other part of it is reaching out to publishers and reaching out to producers. And they basically have a whole system of how you do that. I have like a whole list of maybe 50, 60 publishers and producers that I do monthly reach outs to in order to get on rosters, in order to keep my name out there. It's always like narrator update and a little like smiley face in the subject line. And then I
Yeah.
just like tell them what I'm up to, a little fun fact about what my life has been like over the past month. And from that, I've been able to get a lot of momentum moving. So that was a big part of it. And then once I wasn't like completely set up, but I was set up enough to create some samples, right? I just started there. Like I started with just sitting in my booth, going to ACX, doing auditions, whether I booked it or not, I didn't really care because I knew that I could use them as samples. So I would take books and I would just like do 3, 4, 5 minutes of a sample. And that's what I started to use as my like calling card.
Yeah.
I also have a website. It's called therealjulienneirons.com because the julienneirons.com for some reason is stolen. I don't know why people want it, but somebody wants
Sure.
it. And so on my website, I have, just a tab with audiobook samples. And so like I direct everybody to that, and it's really easy how it's set up. People could just like go on my website, hear my samples. That's really how I sort of got the ball rolling. And now it's just about, consistently doing that. Now I'm at the point where I am getting books consistently with certain publishers, which is really nice. But I also want to reach out to other publishers and like make, have connections with, maybe a publisher that does a lot of like thriller or horror, because I don't get to do a lot of that right now, but like that's my love. I love doing scary shit.
Yeah.
Right? I love doing thrillers. I love doing murder mysteries. Like that's really fun for me. But the publishers that I'm working with now, they don't do a lot of that. So when I do my reach out this time around, I'm going to be very specific with like who I'm reaching out to, what I'm saying to them too, right?
Yeah.
In my reach out emails. And seeing what other, ways I can sort of get my foot in the door with other publishers that I really want to work with.
Yeah. Wow. So I kind of have a lot to unpack just of everything that you just said. It's cool. No, it's great because I already had, I've already got some things I want to ask, but I want to kind of backtrack just a little bit on some of those things you said. So would you recommend a newbie narrator or someone interested in getting into narrating to get an agent? Is it a required thing?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Why did you get one?
Well, my agent's for TV and film.
Okay.
So I've always had a television and film agent, commercial agent, because I have to have a TV, film, and commercial agent.
Yes.
Because I can't directly go to a casting director or producer. I can't go to WB and be like, here's my stuff,
Sure.
They'd be like, who are you? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I need to have somebody, I need to have a middleman or middle woman, because all of my reps are actually women. So, but for narration, I don't need that. That's why narration is such a good quote unquote hustle job.
Yeah.
Because that money is all mine, baby. I gotta share with nobody.
Yep, exactly. That's perfect. Yeah. Just the government, pay your taxes.
Just the government. That's it. Just gotta pay the government.
That's right.
So that makes sense, right? Like just the difference between the two.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I figured there was a difference, but it's nice to hear that there is a difference between you've got your path as a narrator, and that's solely your responsibility, and that's your mission if you got the drive behind it.
Yeah. You
want to go the other lane and do film and TV. Get the agent.
Yeah, you need an agent for that. You need a rep for that. Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what's inspired you to do this after the initial, hey, you should try this audiobook adventure thing? What continues to inspire you?
I love telling stories. I have so much fun doing it. And it sort of takes the pressure off of TV and film for me. Right. So before this, I had a lot of like, oh, I got to book something. I got to do it. I got to book it. Oh my God, if I don't book it, then I'm a failure. Oh God. Oh Lord. Right. And so a lot of that pressure has been sort of released because, oh, look, I've got a 300-page book with, 25 characters that I get to create. And I get to sit here and play like, oh, good, I'm going to focus on this. I don't know. It just like, it gives me butterflies. It makes me feel very excited.
You're always excited going into any audiobook that you do?
No. There's some audiobooks where I like one I'm working on right now, it feels very bubblegum. Does that make sense? Like it feels very like, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I get
nothing really happens. It's just like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
So I did have a little bit of resistance with this book, but how I solve that is I get very specific with who my characters are. And I make sure that they are important. And so if my characters are important to me, and if what they're going through is important to me, then it's a lot easier for me to be like, all right, 6 hours in the booth talking about bubblegum, let's go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like I had my last book with Tantor was this amazing YA horror thriller. I was like, oh, I get to work today.
That's awesome.
It was so much, I just got goosebumps thinking about it. Like, it was so much fun to do one of the voices of like he was a dead guy and he sort of talked like this, right? Like
yeah.
Just a blast.
That's awesome. Yeah. How booked up do you try to be For
Okay.
audiobooks
For
specifically.
audiobooks, yeah. So I'm still in that phase of like, am I gonna get another book? Am I gonna get another book? Oh God! And something always seems to come. So right now I have this book that I'm working. I'll be done by tomorrow, and then I have another book that I have on my calendar. But after that, it's kind of like, you know. But I've been pretty. It's interesting because over the past like 6 months, it's been really consistent. So even though I get to the space where like, all right, I don't got anything else after this book, boom, something else has come.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm still at that space where I'm like, yeah, let's see what happens.
It's the fine balance between
Yeah.
really wanting to set your sights on film and TV, but there's audiobooks over here, right?
Yeah.
So you already mentioned this, and me being an audiobook engineer and recording tons of books that I have and working on them, I kind of already know the answer to this, but I like to ask this question because it's always a different approach for every narrator, depending on the genre or the feeling of the book.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the different approaches that you've had to take per book? Getting into that headspace, that mindset.
Yeah.
Every book is different that you've done, right? So if you've done a thriller, you've done a kid's book, you've done maybe a self-help book. I'm just
Yeah.
spitballing here right now, but with those different genres of books, what type of different approach do you take? How do you get into that mindset?
So I think this is very interesting because this is where a lot of my my TV acting theater experience can come into play for me. Every book that I do, with the exception of it being like a nonfiction book, because I work on those a little bit differently than I do fiction. So with my fiction books, everything sort of starts the same way. I read through it. I have a doc, a Google sheet doc thingy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm real pretty. I have a Google doc, a Google sheet, and basically this is something that I actually got from the Great Audiobook Adventure, and it has everything on it that I need to like make sure I have all the characters. So every time a new character comes up, I'll put my character name down, and then I'll put a description about them. I'll do their vocal placement. I'll do the page that they show up on. I'll put like how other people talk about them, how other people see them, right? And if they have an accent or something, right? So every single character in the book gets that. And then it's all about story, right? So a thriller next to like Bubblegum, for me personally, it's going to come out differently because of the words on the page that I'm expressing, right? If I know what's happening in the story, I don't break down every chapter unless I don't understand what's going on. But I know I have a very clear idea about what is going on in each chapter summaries, right?
Right.
And so sometimes I'll just go into that and be like, chapter 54, this is like the highlight of that scene. Know this for chapter 7 or something, right?
Sure.
And then it's so much of it is like the energy of the book. I don't know how else to really describe it, but like when you're working on a show like Scandal, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be very different from a show like Modern Family. They're completely different energies.
Right.
And if you know that, and if you can adjust to that, for me, that's kind of the same way my body interprets books for narration.
Right.
Right. So like thriller book with ghosts and like, all this like
Demons
hellfire,
and
and stuff. It's going to be very different from like a romance when they're like, when I'm talking about two people banging, it's going to be a very different, different energy.
Sure. That does bring up a question in how you have to diversify performance for audiobooks based on what that genre is. Now it makes me really curious, and I'm sure listeners and viewers, because this is also on YouTube.
Hey.
It makes me curious though, how do you diversify narration to dialogue on the page? How do you know what's coming up? You kind of have to read ahead, but while you're
Oh, yeah.
still very present. How do you do that?
Well, I read the entire book first, so I do know what's going to happen. Like, I
Mhm.
know that these two people are going to end up in love together at the end of this. They're going to end
Right.
up together in love with a kid, right? As
Right.
opposed to these two people are going to end up hating each other
Yeah.
in the end. And that sort of like influences how I but see a lot of it though is in the moment, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is this conversation that these two people are having? Right? What are they actually saying to each other? What do
Right.
they mean? What are the
Right.
words coming out of there? So what is the subtext underneath it? What does he want when he says, you want another waffle? How about some more bacon? Right? Like, is he trying to seduce her with that? Is he like, does he want her to stay a little bit longer? Like,
Yeah.
right? What is, for me, it's all about like the subtext and what these people actually want from each other in this particular moment. And that can change in the very next moment because of something one character says. That
Yeah.
can change. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's like, fuck you, get out of my house. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah,
it
for
really
sure.
is. Yeah. Like, and then sometimes, so to your point, sometimes I have to go back and correct myself.
Mhm.
So sometimes, like it happened today where I thought that the intention was one way. And so I sort of like, played it one way. I acted it one way with the character. But then I read a little bit further on and it was her intention was different than what my intention was.
Sure.
From what I understood in that moment. So I just went back and I adjusted it.
How do you prep your scripts after you've gone through it your first initial read and you have a male character, then it switches to just normal narration,
Mm-hmm.
then back to male character talking to female character,
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be? How do you mark up your script so you know that you have to start changing your voice?
I don't really have, I got to be honest, I don't really have to do that. When I'm in the moment, when I'm in the flow, I know who's talking. And if it's not clear because of like the writing, which happened in my last book, there was some part where I was like, I have no idea who's talking right now. Like, who is
Sure.
saying? Because there was like
Yeah.
5 people in the conversation, and then
Mhm.
there was like a line with no like Mario said, and I was like, wait, who
Yeah.
said this? So I had to like go in and just like break the scene down a little bit.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, okay, this person is saying it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you went through the audiobook adventure,
Mm-hmm.
right? Talk to me about the engineering side of things for you.
Sure.
The recording side of things. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously me being an audiobook engineer,
Yeah.
it's kind of it's a second nature thing for me.
For
Uh,
sure.
but talk to me about it when you were first initially buying gear, getting
Mhm.
set up, connecting everything. Like you said, they already kind of walked you through it. But
Yeah.
once the hand holding is done,
Yeah.
where do you go from there? And
Well,
what
here's the
gear
thing.
did you have to get? What gear did you get? Talk to me about that
Sure.
first.
So here's the thing. They walked us through it, but they weren't like, buy this, right? Like I still had to figure out like what was right for me. And like when I started doing this, it was a time of the pandemic where I couldn't go test out mics at like, whatever store. Like I had to just like, oh, well, let's see. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So
Right.
I just sort of went, and when I first started doing it, I kind of just went with like the path of least resistance for me. Path of least resistance is this mic because it can be a USB mic and it can also be when I learn more about, interfaces and studio channels, I can use a Shure mic to plug it in. And so little by little, I decided just to go with Reaper because at the time it was free. And then also it kind of felt like badass because like everyone's like, oh my God, you use Reaper? Oh, it's so like complicated. And I was like, I'm gonna figure this shit out, right?
Right.
Because I'm sure there's like easier DAWs to use, but I was like, no, let me just figure out. For whatever reason, my instincts gravitated towards Reaper, and then Booth Junkie has all these amazing tutorials on Reaper. And then I just learned step by step how to punch and roll through his tutorial. Then I just started making like little samples just to practice.
Yeah.
And then eventually I started working with publishers. And I was like, ooh, I got to get a better setup. So I got a little Scarlet Solo. And then I started working with Penguin Random House. And I worked with their engineer to just like make sure my sound was okay. And he was like, you know what would really benefit you is a studio channel. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Okay.
Yeah.
And so like he was so gracious. I bought this. I was like, okay, like I was like, I'm gonna get it. It's kind of scares me, but I got it. And then he spent like 2.5 hours with me just helping me figure out how to like get it set up for my system.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing that I'm like, I still had things to learn after that, right? So my studio channel was like, where I'm sitting right now, I have like my computer, I have my Scarlett, I got like the Furman, I got my
you got the
Furman,
so you got the power conditioner, right?
Right. But I had my studio channel like on this side, and it was like always so crackly. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Like, don't you know I reset up my booth and I just put the studio channel down here and all the static just went away. Little by little, every time I get in the booth, every time I work on something, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. How do I do this? Like, oh, this happened. Let me go get a tutorial and like figure out how to fix that. And that's literally has been like, I've been just training myself with like Booth Junkie and like other, specialists.
And that's kind of the thing too, right? It's once you get into it and start playing with things, honestly, it's not as scary as most seem.
I want to upgrade my mic eventually. I just booked 2 nationals. Hey.
So
they're running. So I'm going to pay off my credit cards first because I'm a responsible adult. And then I'm going to look into getting a better mic. Although I do love this mic, like my sound seems to be okay. I mean,
I think you sound great, to be honest. I think you sound great. Yeah. I mean, from an engineer. Yeah, well, I was gonna say from an engineer standpoint, if you have something, this is my personal opinion. So everyone else got their own opinion. That's fine. They can do whatever they want to do. I'm not gonna ever shame anyone. Or changing things out. But if you have stuff, in my opinion, that is working for you, I say stick with it.
So stick with it, right?
Like, I say stick with it because it's it's going to save you money. B, it's tried and true and it works. Talk to me about some of your wins and your fails in any degree that you want to talk about. Could be software, could be performance, whatever you want. I'm curious.
Okay, so I'll say one of my biggest wins was the book I just did with Penguin Random House. It was a win for a number of different reasons. They wanted like 4 days for this book, and then we realized it's going to take us a lot longer than 4 days, right? And so what I loved about what I did was I was able to like use my voice and stand up for myself and say, guys, I need more time. Right? Like, I'm never going to get this done in 4 days. I need more time. And so we were granted more time. The other part of that was a win was this book was it was nonfiction. It was probably the hardest book I've ever done in my career so far because there were a lot of names. It was basically a history book. There were a lot of names that I had no idea. I didn't know who these people were, and I didn't know how to pronounce the names. And there was a lot of words that were foreign to me that I was just like, I have never even seen this word before. Ever in my life. And I wasn't alone in it either because
now I have to say it.
And now I have to say it, right? So I wasn't alone in that. It was like me and the director just being like, what is that word? And then we'd look it up and be like, oh, that is a word, right? Like, and so like just like working together, we did like 9 days, anywhere from 6 to 9 hours a day. But you know what? I got that bitch done.
Yeah.
It was 15 and a half hours of a book. And I'm so proud of myself for it was such a test in like, what do you call it when you're like endurance? It was such a test in
your endurance and your stamina. Absolutely.
Yeah. But it was at the end of the day, I'm really glad that I did it. And I feel really proud of myself for doing it.
Yeah.
Now on the other end, I had a book where I thought I did all the work and all the research that I needed to do in order to make this book shine. And then I got my pickups back, and usually I get like you know, for like an 8 hour, 9 hour book, I'd usually get like 30 pickups. Like I'll miss a word. I'm dyslexic too, so like sometimes
Okay.
I say the wrong word, or like yeah, things just my brain sees it one way, my mouth says it another way. Um, and so like I'll get like, you know, 30 to 40 pickups to do for like an 8 hour book. And I
Yeah.
saw this sheet. It was like over 300 pickups. And I was like, what? What? I had said one of the main characters' names wrong.
Oh,
Like
man.
for the
Okay.
entire book, I said her name and I
Yeah.
thought I said it right. But for the entire book, so for just for her name, I had 271 pickups
Sure.
that I had to go through. My poor engineer and I, God bless him. God bless his patient heart. Because he went in for me. And this is why I told my friend this actually when this happened. I was like, it's really important for you to have and find an engineer that you have a good relationship with, because you're going to fuck up and things are going to go wrong.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that you have somebody who like has your back and like can help you make the process easier.
Right.
And so my engineer was like, amazing. He went in and he literally pulled out every sample where I said this character's name wrong, sent it to
Wow.
me, sent me all the files, and then all I had to do is like one consistent like, you know, stream of saying them all right. So
Right.
it was, I was just like, I would not have been able to do that without him, because it was actually the publisher that caught the mistake.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they didn't give me any, they gave me timestamps, but they didn't like give me any of the
Yeah.
sound things. And I was like,
Sure.
oh my God, this is gonna
They
take me
just said,
forever.
you did this wrong. Redo
Exactly. Redo it. And I was like, fuck.
it. Right.
But because I had a solid engineer, I was
Mhm.
able to just go in. It did take me a few hours to get it right, or to do it. But that was a great lesson for me, because I just really learned like know how to say a name, right? It was a foreign name. It was a Vietnamese name that I thought I had right, but sorry, I just burped.
Part of the narrator thing, right?
It was a Vietnamese name where when I thought I had it right and I totally had it wrong, and I was like, "You have a friend with this same name. Why didn't you just ask him in the first
Man.
place?"
Yeah.
And so I asked him, and he was like, "That's all wrong." And I was like, "I know." He was
Okay.
like, "This is how I say it." And I was like, "Okay." So, yeah.
So, for the viewers, for the listeners,
Yeah.
what was the name?
Oh no. Okay. So the name was NGYU, no, NGUYEN,
Hmm.
NGUYEN. And I said it because I'm an idiot, Nguyen, which ain't right, sister brother out there. That ain't right. It's
Sure.
either it's the accepted pronunciations of it are Nguyen or Win. And
Yeah.
my friend goes by Nguyen. And so I
Okay.
just decided to go with Nguyen.
Yeah.
And that was such a huge lesson for me to know, like, do the extra research. Ask
Sure.
somebody who like speaks that language, like that knows better than you do. Don't just like go to YouTube and say, "Oh, I can learn it this way," because eventually you're going to get the wrong pronunciation, which I did, or I couldn't hear it right, and I messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But like you said, it's a valuable lesson to learn, and it kind
Yeah.
of there was already in that is kind of a win in itself, because you
Mm.
had a takeaway, a good takeaway from that awful experience,
Oh,
right?
I did.
And
Yeah.
that's the research part, which is, I mean, key for any new narrator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you've been doing this for a little while, and that was like it sounds like to me your first big hiccup. What are some like funny circumstances that you've been in, or things that
Um,
you've got caught up into specifically,
yeah.
or that you've just had a blast with, you know?
Yeah. So I really love doing erotica.
Oh, cool.
I think it's so fun. And so one thing that I've sort of like, I haven't had a good erotica book in so long, but one thing that I sort of got into the habit with. So when I'm in my booth, like where are my glasses? I usually am sitting here with my glasses on and I'm like, look like a complete nerd and like, just sometimes I got my hair scarf on because I don't like my hair brushing up again. You know that black girl, you don't want to get
Sure. Yeah.
right? And so like I'll like make these like really like raunchy Instagram posts with
Mhm.
just like words from that erotica, and it's that to me and my friends love it. It's so freaking funny. It makes me laugh so much. And then like just the sort of like commentary that I might have afterwards. It's just like I don't know. I have a blast doing that. It just like I have too much fun. How is this my life? Like I'm getting paid for this right now?
Mhm.
What? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I had an aha moment the other day where I was like on my bike and I was cycling and I was like, I feel like for my entire life I've been preparing for this job
Mhm.
because my entire life I thought that I would like the gift of like being able to create voices, the not even just the gift, but the joy. Oh, it's not, it's for a purpose.
Yeah.
Like this is a part of my purpose is and
Right.
that's what like God universe gave me this skill for. It's not weird.
Right.
It's a talent. It's a skill. I'm just now figuring it out that that is a part of my purpose. That like being able to have these voices and create these characters and just like it's actually easier for me to create cartoon character voices than it is for me to create voices in narration sometimes.
Yeah.
And so Joel actually taught he was like it's not about the character or it's not about the voice, it's about the performance, right? So
Mhm.
like so what I started to do now is I'll make the characters really big. I'll do like the exaggerated form of that character if I can't find her voice or his voice, and then I'll just narrow it down for narration. And oh my God, it's fucking life changing.
Yeah.
So much more fun now.
So you've mentioned his name twice. I know him really well.
Oh
He is an
yeah,
awesome dude. I
he
love the
is.
guy.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get him on this podcast. So
yeah.
if you're listening, Joel, let's do it, buddy. Who is Joel? How did you find him? What's his full name? What does he specify in specifically for narration, voice acting, whatever? What's his niche
Yeah.
for you?
So I found Joel Frumpkin through a friend, a narrator friend, who was like, "You got to take his course. He's awesome."
Yeah.
And he does this 15-week course called Acting for Audio.
Oh,
And
cool.
so, yeah, every Tuesday we have class, and it's a 3-hour class, and he just breaks it down from like, you know, just this is how you act. And now we're starting to get into like breaking down a scene, and then we're going to get into like character voices and the more advanced stuff. But he just does a really good job of breaking down what it is to be a narrator
Hmm.
and making it really easy to understand. When I first got into his class, I was like, ugh, this is a little acting 101 for me. To be honest, I was a little bit like, why am I doing this? But then I had talked to him about that, and I realized that I wasn't giving myself a shot in this class to learn from a master like Joel.
That's the one beautiful part I love about this industry is
Mm,
that even though I'm on the, I'm behind the curtain, I'm the guy on the other side not
yeah.
doing the acting. A lot of people in this industry have this certain personality where we might have our our introverted ways,
Hmm.
but a lot of it when we get together and we're starting to talk and mingle and
Yeah.
get to know each other and like what you said earlier about networking and that extrovert comes out
Hmm.
and you just find the fun side, right?
The world of audiobooks, everybody is so giving. And
Yeah.
like I have a friend who got me like in with like two different publishers because she was just like, I think you'd be great for these guys. And I'm
That's
like,
awesome. Wow.
okay. You know, and it's just very like we just help each other out a lot. Like my roommate, she's trying to get into narration now too. And so I'm just like doing my best to like help her. And like,
Yeah.
it's such a different energy to
Sure.
your point. I
Yeah.
don't know why that is, but it is. And it feels really empowering to be amongst people who are very giving.
Yeah.
And it feels very freeing. Like I feel like I'm a part of something that's loving and kind and easygoing,
Yeah.
which is kind of different than TV and film, which is not always easygoing. It's like
Yeah.
a lot more structured. Yeah.
It does make me curious because you see both worlds. Do you see a difference in it's who you know to get in? Do you get that vibe at all?
As far as like, it's such an interesting question. Because yeah, always, right? Like in both sides, it could be who you know, right? I
Mhm.
think that's a part of like any industry, no matter
Sure.
what it
Yeah.
is, right? It's about who you know.
Yeah.
I think with audiobooks, though, it's less so because with audiobooks, it's really about the quality of your voice and your
Sure.
talent,
Mhm.
right? So I didn't know anybody at Penguin Random House. I didn't
Yeah.
have a referral for them at all, but they found my stuff off of Ahab, and that's how I started working with them.
That's pretty encouraging to hear, I
Yeah,
mean, for people that want to get into audiobooks, that's like one of the number one things that people have asked me about is,
yeah.
well, you work for a publisher, can you give me a good word? And yeah, I can always say something, that's not a big deal,
Hmm.
but the casting director, producer, whatever you want to call them, they're still going to have to hear your voice. So it's ultimately
Yeah.
up to them.
And you have to be in this world. You have to be your own agent in the narration. Nobody's going to give you a book if you're just waiting for it. It's not going to
Right.
happen.
Right.
So you have to be your own agent. You have to be your own publicist. You have to be your own director quite often,
Yeah.
right? Like you have to do, and sometimes you have to be your own engineer. So if I'm like I had to do an audition for a publisher yesterday, I had to like make sure that there was no static underneath my sample so that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
wasn't distracting. You know what I
Right.
mean? So we had to do a lot of stuff on our own. You're not just the artist. You have like 5 different hats that you're wearing, and you have to be willing to do that,
Right.
right? You have to be willing to, for me, right? I have to be willing to once a month do all my reach out to all my 50 publishers and producers,
Yeah.
right? Like I have to do that. So it is good that people are like, hey, can you help me get in or whatever? But I'm also always like, well, what else are you doing
Yeah.
in order to get yourself in?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how are you promoting yourself? How are you, getting better at what you do?
We are about to wrap this up,
Yeah.
and you've already touched on pretty much everything that I want to ask you in this last question. So I'm going to ask it in the most basic form. What's the best piece of advice you want to give somebody that's wanting to get into this?
Okay. Best piece of advice I would give you is don't try to do it on your own, right? Find some sort of resources to help you because there's a lot that goes into it and it's just helpful to like have somebody else to guide you. Also, what I did was I got really overwhelmed with like all of the things that I had to do. Like
Yeah.
I didn't know, even though that program, the Great Audiobook Adventure, was like laid out for me, I still was like, I'm so overwhelmed by everything that has to be done. And so
Right.
I literally just picked the thing that was the most fun for me. I
Yeah.
was like, what is the most fun for me to do right now? And that's what I'm going to start with. So like I started with, I can't remember what the first thing you're supposed to start with or the second thing you're supposed to start with, but I started with like maybe the sixth thing and it was building your booth. For whatever reason, that gave me clarity. That gave me like, okay, it gave me something tangible to do.
Right.
Right. And it
One
was
thing to cross off the list that's already done. Yeah.
exactly. And for whatever reason, that made more sense to me than starting where they had originally wanted me to start. And so then once I had my booth set up, it was like, okay, I'm in here. Now I can focus on the next things. Or
It feels
the next
real.
fun thing?
Exactly.
It feels real. Yeah. So like get help, Find a program, find a class. Like, don't be afraid to invest in yourself because it'll pay off. Oh, here's another bit of advice I have. Can I
Yeah.
have two?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So figure out, first and foremost, if you like doing long form VO. Okay. Can you sit in a booth for 6 hours a day and record a book? And the way that you do that is just by doing it. Take a book, whether it's on your iPad or a regular book or whatever, and sit wherever you have like a confined space. Put a little light in there. I have my Hello Gorgeous sign up here. And that's what I did. I was like, okay, do I really want to do this? And I just read a book. I didn't really understand punch and roll at the time. I was so new.
Yeah.
But I was like, let me just read a book. And I figured out that I loved it.
That's awesome.
So before you do anything, just go in your closet and read a book out loud.
Yeah, just sitting there and practice.
Just sitting there and practice. Just sitting there and practice. Because you might do all this shit, and then you get your first book, and you're like, I hate this.
Yeah.
But practice beforehand. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. The last thing I want to ask is, where can people find you?
Oh, I'm on the tweets a lot, the twits, and I'm on the gram a lot. The twits is Julienne Irons 8, and the gram is Julienne_Irons.
Cool. Right on. That is awesome. Well, you know what? Thank you so much again for talking with me.
Yeah, this is fun.
I absolutely adore you. You're awesome. I know you're going to kill it, and you're going to keep killing it. You already are. You already sound like you're crazy busy, which is a good thing. And yeah, no, you're gonna go places, and I'm happy that I can see that. You know what I mean?
Thanks, Ryra. I feel the same way about you. I really do.
Man, I love talking to people so much. Julienne is so fun to talk with, and I loved my time with her. So be sure to check out her work, including, but not limited to, Killing Me Softly, The Dragon Keep, and The Founders Unmasked. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any more of the tips, tricks, or guidance from these amazing narrators. And remember, if you want a roadmap and you're looking for a quick win in starting your narration journey, head to thehomeaudioproject.com/narrator and download the free guide. Thanks again so much for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. But if I could ask you for one more favor, it'd mean the world to me. Could you please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts? They help a lot so I can reach more people like you who are aspiring narrators in the world. With that, we will see you in another episode of the Home Audio Podcast real soon.